Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jabuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radhe Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajak Acharya Ashtara Sacha Sri Śrimad ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Lila Prabhupada Om Vishnupad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakohosh Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopanath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Gira Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Bhajamume Dhamadham Ki Jai Shri Namadi Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Nilachal Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Srimati Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai The most beautiful Lordship Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki Jai Shri Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai Samabeta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Going back to home, back to Godhead ki jai. ISKCON New York Yatra ki jai. Brihad Madanga Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai. International Food for Life Transcendental Prasadam Distribution ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Nittai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Deving Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. By reciting the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us, before reciting the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God and Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, who is the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. By regularly attending classes on the Śrimad Bhāgavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, whose worship with transcendental songs becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're continuing our reading from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam. This is the fourth canto, chapter 8, and today's text should be 35. Dhruva Vacha Soyang Shamo Bhagavata Sukha Dukkha Tatmanam Darshita Kripaya Pungsam Durdarsho Smad Vidaistu Yaha Dhruva Vacha Soyang Shamo Bhagavata Sukha Dukkha Tatmanam Darshita Kripaya Pungsam Durdarsho Smad Vidaistu Yaha Dhruva Vacha Soyang Shamo Bhagavata Sukha Dukkha Tatmanam Darshita Kripaya Pungsam Durdarsho Smad Vidaistu Yaha. Please chant. Dhruva Vacha Soyang Shamo Bhagavata Sukha Dukkha Tatmanam Darshita Kripaya Pungsam Durdarsho Smad Vidaistu Yaha. Dhruva Vacha Soyang Shamo Bhagavata Sukha Dukkha Tatmanam Darshita Kripaya Pungsam Durdarsho Smad Vidaistu Yaha. Dhruva Vacha Anyone else? Todd? Hare Krishna. Chant. Yes. Oh, okay. Dhruva Soyang Shamo Bhagavata Sukha Dukha Hatatmanam Darshita Kripaya Pungsam Durdarsho Smadvidaistu Yaha. Okay, synonyms. Dhruva Uvacha. Dhruva Maharaj said, Saha, that. I am this. Shamaha, equilibrium of mind. Bhagavata, by your lordship. Sukha Dukha, happiness and miseries. Hata Atmanam, those who are affected. Darshitaha, shown. Kripaya, by mercy. Pungsam, of the people. Durdarshaha, very difficult to perceive. Asmat Vidai, by persons like us. To, but. Yaha, whatever you have said. Srila Prabhupada's translation for this verse. Dhruva Maharaj said, my dear Lord Naradaji, for a person whose heart is disturbed by the material conditions of happiness and distress, whatever you have so kindly explained for attainment of peace of mind is certainly a very good instruction. But as far as I am concerned, I am covered by ignorance, and this kind of philosophy does not touch my heart. Please repeat. Dhruva Maharaj said, my dear Lord Naradaji, for a person whose heart is disturbed by the material conditions of happiness and distress, whatever you have so kindly explained for attainment of peace of mind is certainly a very good instruction. But as far as I am concerned, I am covered by ignorance, and this kind of philosophy does not touch my heart. Srila Prabhupada's purport. There are various classes of men. One class is called akamis, referring to those who have no material desire. Desire must exist, either material or spiritual. Material desire arises when one wants to satisfy one's personal senses. One who is ready to sacrifice anything to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be said to have spiritual desire. Dhruva did not accept the instruction given by the great Saint Narada because he taught himself unfit for such instruction, which prohibited all material desires. It is not a fact, however, that those who have material desires are prohibited from worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the essential instruction from the life of Dhruva. He frankly admitted that his heart was full of material desires. He was very much affected by the cruel words of his stepmother, whereas those who are spiritually advanced do not care about anyone's condemnation or adoration. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that persons who are actually advanced in spiritual life do not care for the dual behavior of this material world. But Dhruva Maharaj frankly admitted that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness. He was confident that the instruction given by Narada was valuable, yet he could not accept it. The question raised here is whether or not a person afflicted by material desires is fit to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The answer is that everyone is fit to worship Him. Even if one has many material desires to fulfill, he should take to Krishna consciousness and worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is so merciful that he fulfills everyone's desires. Through this narration, it will become very clear that no one is barred from worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if one has many material desires. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschate Deshnarine Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtang Stapitang Jaina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyahang Shri Guru Shri Tapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaisavangscha Shri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Ragana Tanvatam Tang Sajivam Shadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvatangscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatubhya Shra Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we quite often ask who's speaking to make sure everybody's paying attention, but we don't have to ask today because it started out Dhruva Vacha, so we know who's speaking. And who's he speaking to? That's also stated in the verse. He calls him Bhāgavata, which proper translates as Narada. Naradaji. He's speaking to Narada. Now, what is the relationship between Dhruva Maharaj and Narada Muni? Well, that relationship is about to begin, but they're already related. Who is Dhruva Maharaj's father? Exactly, we're getting there. Dhruva Maharaj's father is Uttanapad. Uttanapad's father is Swayambhuva Manu. Priyavrata is his brother. And who is Swayambhuva Manu's father? Lord Brahma. And who is Narada Muni's father? Lord Brahma. So Swayambhuva Manu and Narada are brothers. So Dhruva Maharaj's grandfather's brother, Narada. So he's like a grand uncle. So they're already related. But that's not astonishing because we're all related. Nowadays, genealogy is very, very popular. You pay some money and they trace out your ancestors for you and they send you a report. And people are all hoping that they're related to some very important person in the past, like Louis XIV or, Napoleon if you think he's great, or maybe Cleopatra or something like that. Nobody wants to hear that they're related to Hitler or Jack the Ripper or something like that. But we're all related. If you trace out your material genealogy, it goes all the way back to Brahma, Lord Brahma. So we're all related to our material line. And in our case, the spiritual line, we trace out your spiritual master, his spiritual master, in our line, Brahma Madhva Sampradaya, Gaudiya Sampradaya, it goes back to Lord Brahma. So any way you trace out your genealogy, it goes back to Lord Brahma. So we're all related. In India, they have the term, it's not popular here in America, but they have the term cousin brother. Sometimes I meet somebody and I ask them, do you have any siblings? And they say, no, I'm an only child. But then, this is my cousin brother. You just told me you have no siblings. No, because we consider our cousin to be like brother, which is very good. We should consider all living entities to be brother. All living entities. Not that those related by blood or by spiritual initiation. No, everybody's related. So if we're all related, if we accept that as being factual, then why can't we get along? Why is it that literally every day, some people on this planet get up and instead of making a plan to go to Mangalarti and jump up and down and dance in front of the deities, they make a plan to go out and kill somebody. Or in some cases, as many people as they can kill. Why is it that people, that's the influence of the modes of material nature. So Krishna's modes of material nature Daivihi Esha Guna Mai Mama Duratya. Mama Maya Duratya. It's Krishna's energy is under his control and it's insurmountable. That's not just an overstatement by the Lord. It's actually an understatement. We cannot overcome Maya by our own devices. And Maya is so powerful that she has everyone in her grip, and the vast majority of them don't even know that they're in her grip. They're thinking that they're in control of their existence, they can do whatever they want. No. Completely under the control of Krishna's material energy, which is under Krishna's control. And therefore, if you want to get out, if you realize that you're being controlled by the material energy, and not necessarily in a positive way, negatively, being forced to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. Like many people fall into addiction, and then they finally wake up one day and they want to break that addiction, but it's not so easy once you become addicted. So similarly, we have been mistrained, we've been misled by Maya, Krishna's throwing and covering potency, to think that we can be happy without surrender to Krishna. The very word surrender is like anathema, it's like poison to us. Surrender. But no, as we mature, we practice some form of surrender to some personalities. In the beginning, to parents, because you realize the parents are my well-wishers. So if I surrender to their wishes, generally speaking, it's going to have a positive outcome. So children learn gradually to surrender. In the beginning, they don't. We all go through what we call terrible twos, where the most prominent word in our vocabulary is no. No matter what anybody asks you, no. Not going there. I don't want it. But then as you mature, you learn to say yes in the right circumstances, and generally speaking, yes to whatever the parents want, because you accept them as being your well-wishers. And then to friends, and then later on, as we mature, we get into romantic situations where you have to surrender. If you don't surrender, if you think you're going to dominate and be the boss, then you don't have a relationship. Everything falls apart. So it's the same thing when we come in contact again with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Who better to surrender to than that person who knows everything, knows everyone, possesses everything, is their well-wisher, Surit. I think it was after Krishna Kripa's class, Dr. Michael was asking, well, if everyone is your friend, then you don't have any friend. There are different kinds of friends. Sanskrit is such a refined language. Very different. So Maitri is kind of a general friendship. You can apply it generally. But Krishna says, Surit, I am your dearmost friend. That Surit, Rit means heart. So somebody who is Surit means you can't separate them from your heart. They're completely ensconced and in control of your heart. So that's Krishna. Krishna says himself. He says, Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarva lokamahesh Suritam sarva bhutanam. I am the dearmost friend of all living entities. We cannot find a dearer friend. Everybody wants to have friends. No, as they say, the saying goes in English, no man is an island. You cannot exist alone. It's just not possible for us to exist without taking some contact or having some contact with others. It's not possible. And even if you don't see them directly, just like we don't get up every day and we don't see the earthworms, but the earthworms are doing their business and it benefits all of us. If the earthworms didn't aerate keep it on. Yeah. If the earthworms didn't aerate the soil, then things wouldn't grow nicely. If the bees didn't pollinate the soil, if the bees didn't pollinate the plants, then we would be bereft. And right now there's a big crisis around the world because a lot of bees are dying off. Hello, no surprise, because we're poisoning the air, we're poisoning the water, we're poisoning the land. Of course these creatures are going to die. But we all benefit from them. But we don't think about it. Nobody gets up every day. Well, not too many people get up and worry about the bees. And that's why their situation is dire. Nobody gets up and worries about the earthworms. In some cultures they do, like in Tibet. When they go to construct a building, literally, I don't know if they still do it, but that was the tradition. When they dig in the soil, they would carefully remove any earthworms that were disturbed and relocate them somewhere else. They were so concerned about all the creatures, even down to the worms in the soil. But in general, in modern life, we don't worry about such things. We're very me-centered. Everything centers around me. But the Shastra informs us that Devarshi Bhutapta Ranam Prachidam, Nakinkaranaya Rane Rajan, Charajan, that everybody's a debtor. You're a debtor to the Devas. Why? Because they're controlling everything essential that we need. The air that we breathe, the water that we drink. It's all under somebody's control. And we have different levels of control. Just like here in the city, there's a Department of Water and Power. So if somebody went crazy one day, they could, at least for some time, cut off all the power to the city just by flipping the right switch. So, but we're not so conscious of that because we just go to the outlet, we plug in, and we get power, and we're not worried about it. But if you plug in and you get no power, or the lights will go off all of a sudden, which has happened in New York. I grew up here in New York, I know. We've experienced some total blackouts, a couple at least, where the whole city goes dark. And then you realize, OMG, oh my Govinda, I am dependent. I'm dependent on the delivery of power to be happy. Because the refrigerator goes off, somebody's essential medication starts to spoil. You know, so many things go wrong when the power goes off. But we don't trace out ultimately where is this power coming from. It's not just some power station nearby or some hydroelectric generation system. No, it's ultimately coming from Krishna. But just as ultimately we are dependent on the sun, because everything here is being generated by that powerhouse, but that by the same power, water is evaporated and forms a cloud that covers the sun, and you can't see the sun. And you can live in certain places, parts of this planet, where you don't see the sun for months and months and months. Anybody here been to Scandinavia? Yeah, I've been there. If you've been to Scandinavia, you know they can go through, depending on exactly where you are, 4 to 6 months of darkness, where you practically, there's just a little glimmer of light when it should be day, and then back to complete darkness. So we're dependent on that. But if you were to be born in that situation and never saw the sun, you may think, what sun? What are you talking about? There is no such thing. It's just a myth, mythology. No, but there is a sun. And because of the sun's own power, clouds are formed, or depending on where you're on the planet at the time of year, the sunlight is not visible. But that doesn't mean the sun doesn't exist. So similarly, God exists, the Supreme Sun, the Divine Sun, Krishna. Krishna Surya Sama, Maya Haya Andakar. Krishna is compared to the sunshine, or we should say the sun is compared to Krishna, because the sun is ultimately a creation of Krishna. And Maya is also generated by Krishna, controlled by Krishna, but because we're under the influence of Maya, and Maya blocks our vision of Krishna, we think, what Krishna? What God are you talking about? I'm God, or there is no God, or we're all God. Such foolish talk. So, yesterday's verse was dealing with Narada's instructions on how Dhruva and all of us should relate to people in different categories. So, as I mentioned at the end of the class, it wasn't just about how Vaishnavas should relate to each other. It's really general instruction. Because it's not only in Vaishnavism that we have superiors, equals, and inferiors. It's there for everyone. But outside of the Vaishnava culture, in the Vaishnava culture we have a very strict way of determining hierarchy. But outside that also exists, at least in civilized human society, and that's called Varnashram. So in the Varnashram society, the Brahmanas are considered to be the head or the topmost occupational duty that one can engage in, to be a Brahmana. And Krishna says himself, Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanataya Cha. I am in favor of and supportive of Brahminical culture. So one has to recognize that if one wants to be considered a human being. So the 4 Varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Krishna says, I've created these. These are created by me. And so you have to take note of that. It's not that ultimately one soul is eternally better than another, but no, based on your current situation, if by your current psychophysical situation you are qualified to be a Brahmana, then others should respect that and should see you as being in a superior position. So the Brahmanas are considered superior to the Kshatriyas, even though the Kshatriyas are the administrators, the warriors, they take care of the day-to-day functioning of the state. Still, they should defer to Brahminical advice. They should defer to Brahminical advice. And there's, in the second canto, fourth chapter, there are prayers of Shukadeva Goswami, which in my estimation are not as famous as they should be, because a lot of us, we aspire to learn other prayers like Kunti's prayers, etc., but not too many aspire to learn Shukadeva Goswami's prayers. So the 18th verse of that chapter is pretty famous because Prabhupada recited that one quite often. Kirata hunanja pulinna pulkasha abhira shumphaya vanakashadaya yene chapapa yadaparshayashaya shuddyanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha. So in that verse, he's listing different groups of individuals on this planet, beginning Karatas, the Honas, Anjars, Pulindas, Pulkasha, all of these different groups of people considered to be outside of the Vedic culture because they don't accept Varnashram, or at least not totally or properly. So he said, those and others who are considered to be sinful, they can be delivered by the potency of a devotee of the Lord, because that devotee is connected to Krishna, and that's where the devotee is getting their potency from. The devotees don't claim to be independently potent. Oh, I'm a great this. No. Devotee means meek and humble and recognizing fully the source of his or her strength. So I just wanted to read a section of that purport because it's very applicable to today's situation. So after listing all of the different groups, explaining who are Andas, who are Pulindas, Pulkasha, like that, Prabhupada then makes this very wonderful statement. He says, and from the version of Srila Shukadeva Goswami, it appears that instead of running a godless civilization in the present context of the world situation, if the leadership of world affairs is entrusted to the devotees of the Lord, for which a worldwide organization under the name and style of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has already been started, then, by the grace of the Almighty Lord, there can be a thorough change of heart in human beings all over the world, because the devotees of the Lord are able authorities to effect such a change by purifying the dust-worn minds of the people in general. That's one sentence. One sentence. In one sentence, Prabhupada has defined the problem and given the solution. The politicians of the world may remain in their respective positions because the pure devotees of the Lord are not interested in political leadership or diplomatic implications. The devotees are interested only in seeing that the people in general are not misguided by political propaganda, and that the valuable life of a human being is not spoiled in following a type of civilization which is ultimately doomed. No wonder people are depressed. They're following a lifestyle, a civilization, so-called civilization, that is ultimately doomed. And inside, we know that. Even those who are not trained in Vaishnava culture, they know that deep down, and that's why they're always disturbed. As stated by that famous verse in the Bhāgavatam, Prayena Palsa Shabda Kalo Asmin Yugejana Manda Sumanda Mati Manda Bhagya Hi Upadruta. Above all, always disturbed, because deep down, we're all coming from the Vaikuntha atmosphere. We're all coming from the spiritual world where everything is perfect. People here think, oh, you're just utopian, foolish people thinking in some utopian perfect. No, we actually came from a perfect situation. And that's the psychology that drives us to be upset all the time. Because deep down we want perfection. We want all our relationships to be perfect. We want everybody that we interact with, every situation to be perfect, because we're coming from a perfect atmosphere. But we should also be intelligent enough to know that we're not now in a perfect atmosphere. So we have to be tolerant. We have to be tolerant when things are not perfect. And not only that, our ideas of perfection when we're contaminated in the material atmosphere are not perfect. They're not proper. We're thinking it would be perfect if everybody would recognize me as being important and do what I say. But who are you? We never stop to ask that. Who are you? One soul amongst unlimited souls. And as yesterday's verse stated, there are always people superior. There are always persons that are equal and always persons that are on a lower platform. But when you're not properly trained, you're hateful of those who are superior, and you want to brag and show off to those you think are your equals, and you want to subjugate and dominate those who are on a lower platform. That's the result of material contamination. So Prabhupada continues, if the politicians, therefore, would be guided by the good counsel of the devotees, then certainly there would be a great change in the world situation by the purifying propaganda of the devotees as shown by Lord Chaitanya. So this is our mission. We have to submit ourselves to be trained properly, and then we can assist others to get out of this material contamination, where they're falsely thinking themselves to be great. They develop so many misconceptions, and based on those misconceptions, they develop unrealistic desires that can never really be fulfilled. And even if they are fulfilled, it's actually detrimental to their ultimate well-being. And that's why it said it's better to make an intelligent person your enemy than to make a fool your friend. Why? Because if one is actually intelligent, as defined by Chanakya Pandit, Matarat paradhareshu paradravyeshu losavat atmavat sarvabhuteshu yak pashyati sa pandita. So who's actually intelligent? Who's actually a pandit? First thing, Matarat paradhareshu. One who sees every woman except his wife to be mother. So for those of you who are in the brahmacharya ashram, that means every woman, because you have no wife. So every woman should be seen as mother, not as a potential date, not as a potential conquest, but as mother. Now, obviously one in the brahmacharya ashram can move on to the next ashram, grihastha ashram, and accept one woman as wife. As we discussed in a previous class, there was discussion in ISKCON about having more than one wife. But Prabhupada allowed the discussion to go on, and then he squashed it. He said, no, you can't even properly maintain one wife. What to speak of having more than one? But this is our, again, misconception. Because some devotees were thinking, well, the Kshatriyas in Vedic culture, they're allowed to have more than one wife. I'm a Kshatriya. Yeah, really. Go read 18th chapter and see if you really match the description of a Kshatriya. Shoryam Teja Triti Daksha. Yudye Chapya Palayanam. Dhanam Ishvara Bhavascha. So we like to stress that Ishvara Bhava. I have Ishvara Bhava. I like to control. I like to lead. But so does everybody else, including every 2-year-old. No, you're not going to lead me. Who do you think you are? Every living entity has that Ishvara Bhava. It's just that within society, some portion of society has to be properly trained how to use that Ishvara Bhava for the benefit of others, not for your own aggrandizement. That I have leadership qualities and therefore you should follow me and, worship me, and which is what's going on nowadays. They're not trained, so they don't have proper leadership qualities. They have the desire to lead, but every occupation has to be trained. To become a proper brahmana, one has to be trained by one who's brahmanically proper, one who's brahmanically experienced. Similarly, to be a Kshatriya, one has to be properly trained. We see in the Mahabharata presentation that both the Pandavas and the Kauravas were trained by Dronacharya. He was a Brahmana, but came down to the level of training Kshatriyas. That's not really the occupation of a Brahmana. Brahmana's occupation is patan, yajan, yajan, dana, pratigraha. But sometimes, in an emergency, or for some reason, a Brahmana is allowed to come down to the Kshatriya platform. So he was a Brahmana, but he was training the Kshatriyas because he was well acquainted with the Dhanurveda, how to fight, how to manufacture and use weapons. He was very expert. So he trained both parties. But amongst his students, Arjuna was the topmost. And how? Several times he demonstrated that, because the Kauravas were always envious of the Pandavas. But Dronacharya arranged to show them. So one day he called them all for training in shooting arrows. He said, one by one he called them, do you see that tree? Yes, Guru Maharaj. Do you see the bird in the tree? Yes, Guru Maharaj. Sit down. So they were confused, one by one. Call Arjuna. You see the tree? Do you see the bird in the tree? No, no. I only see the head of the bird. Now you can shoot. Boom. He was so focused. He only saw the head of it was a, fake bird, not a real bird, target. But he was so focused as an archer, he only saw the head of the bird. And then Jonah just shot, took off the head of the bird. So even amongst Kshatriyas, they were all trained by Dronacharya and they were all pretty expert, but still there's, as we say, positive, comparative, superlative. So Arjuna was a superlative student. And we should admit that. That's the point of yesterday's verse. When you come across somebody who's better than you in whatever, whether it's playing mridanga, playing chess, reciting verses, whatever it is, acknowledge it. Don't gloss over it. Because glossing over it means you're envious. You're envious. You don't want to admit. And not even if you are the best. Prabhupada once called Yamuna Devi, who is no longer with us, our dear God sister, and said, now you've become a very expert cook, because she was learning from his sister and other expert cooks in India while she traveled with Prabhupada. He asked, are you teaching the other devotees how to cook? And she said, no, Prabhupada. He said, you must do that. Whatever you learn, you must teach others, otherwise you become envious. In other words, you want to attain a top position and everybody look up to you. But that's not what Vaishnava is all about. Whatever you learn is a skill that you should learn, that you should use in pleasing Krishna, Guru and Krishna, serving Krishna. So whatever you learn, you should be eager to teach others so they can also serve Krishna nicely. Not that I know how to make samosas the best and I don't want to teach anybody my secrets. But no, what secret? We are here to serve Krishna, Radha Govinda, for their pleasure. So whatever skill you learn, as Krishna says, Porosham Nashu, I am the ability in man. So whatever ability we have, God-given, as Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness is very simple. Whatever God-given talent you have, use in God's service. So we should always remember that whatever talents we have are given by Krishna and should be used for His satisfaction. So, and again, we're not, it's not happening. Whatever, if you know how to fix cars and the temple owns so many cars, teach somebody else how to do it. Again, if you know how to cook, teach others how to cook. You know how to play mridanga, teach others how to play mridanga. Everything, yukta vairagya, everything practically can be used in God's service. Every skill that we have. It's just a matter of being guided by superior authority. And that's the next thing. Don't think that because I have the skill, that's all I want to do. No. One may become very expert in one art or science or whatever, but if the guru indicates that he or she wants you to do something else, that's surrender. Sometimes we forget that. But my psychophysical nature, I only want to do... No! Then you're not surrendering. Then you're the boss. This is a process of surrender. Prabhupada would point out repeatedly, Arjuna had to surrender. He didn't want to do what Krishna wanted him to do. Fight against his relatives, cousin brothers and teacher and guru. But that's what Krishna wanted. So this is the lesson of the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is teaching us that you have to surrender to do something that you may not want to do. If every one of us in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness only did what we want to do, then how would things get accomplish. Therefore, Prabhupada said the first step is discipline. Disciple means discipline. You submit yourself to be disciplined by the spiritual master. And Prabhupada said, without discipline, we cannot run an international society. It's not possible. So everybody has to be disciplined, train how to do things in a regulated way, and be ready to do things that you may not necessarily want to do at a particular moment in time. The classic example I use is, you may be the topmost book distributor in the world, but if your Guru Maharaj says, now I want you to put down the book bag and take over management and such, but I'm not a manager. No, this is what I want you to do now. Stop distributing books and go and manage that center or temple or whatever it is. That's surrender. Not that yes, you're allowed to express yourself, as happened with Prabhupada many times. The famous classic one is with Harikesh Prabhu. He became attached to serving Prabhupada as his personal servant and his secretary and whatever. And then Prabhupada said, I want you to leave and go preach in Europe. But Prabhupada, I don't want to go. No, I want you to go. But Prabhupada, what am I going to eat? There's nothing but meat. Eat meat if you have to. But there's no associate. Damn your association. Go. Go and preach. Finally, he surrendered, and we see what happened. Because he surrendered to that order, Eastern Europe opened up. Within a short time, he was sending reports to Prabhupada that were holding programs, and it was dangerous. At that time, those places were up behind the Iron Curtain, so it was dangerous to go there and preach. But that's what Prabhupada wanted him to do, and he finally surrendered. And with the order of the spiritual master comes the potency to fulfill that order. So he was holding programs, and he wrote to Prabhupada one famous letter that we hold programs, we distribute books and prasadam. So the people come with their wallets full, we take all their money, and they leave with their bellies full and their arms full of books. So Prabhupada said. So that's the secret, open secret of Krishna consciousness. Use your God-given talents in Krishna service and surrender to whatever the order of the spiritual master is. Yes, don't blindly surrender. One has to know what are the guidelines. So we have guidelines. If you have a so-called spiritual master who tells you, go and get some Big Macs and we'll sit down and enjoy it. No, then you know this person has gone nuts. It's gone crazy. So you have to know what are the parameters, the guidelines. But within the guidelines of Krishna consciousness, if we're here to perform devotional service, does it really make a difference if you're washing the pots or cleaning the floor or distributing books or chanting, leading the chanting or producing the books? Whatever, within the parameters of the Krishna consciousness movement, if the order comes to do something that you may not immediately want to do or don't even know how to do. Like in the beginning, Prabhupada wanted his Back to God magazine to be printed. And the devotees at the time said, well, Prabhupada, we don't know anything about printing. He said, just go and do it. Krishna will give you intelligence. So sometimes we have to surrender in situations where we don't even really know what we're doing. But because Guru Maharaj wants it, then I have to do it. And the classic example is that South Indian Brahmana. He accepted a guru. He was a Brahmana, supposedly, but he was illiterate, which is kind of hard to accept. A Brahmana is supposed to be learned and teach others, so how are you going to be learned if you're illiterate? But anyway, that was the situation. He was illiterate, he accepted initiation, and his Diksha Guru told him, now I want you to read at least so many chapters of Bhagavad Gita every day. He couldn't read the Sanskrit, the Devanagari characters, he couldn't. So sometimes he was holding the book upside down, and the other Brahmanas were laughing at him. But he didn't care. He was trying to fulfill the order of his spiritual master. So when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited, he saw the situation, and he approached the illiterate Brahmana and said, Brahmana, what are you doing there? And the Brahmana couldn't understand. He's not making fun of me. He said, well, I'm trying to read Bhagavad Gita, but I'm illiterate. I have to admit. But my Guru Maharaj said, you have to read Bhagavad Gita every day, so I'm trying my best. So Lord Chaitanya said, oh, that's very nice, but you say you can't read, but I see sometimes you're crying. Why you're crying? He said, when I just think about Bhagavad Gita, I think my dear Lord Krishna is so kind. He has become the servant of his servant by driving Arjuna's chariot. And when I think of that, I cry. So Lord Chaitanya said, you're the real knower of Bhagavad Gita. Not necessarily these other so-called Brahmanas. They probably knew all 700 verses by heart. But they didn't give their heart. They did not give their heart. So this illiterate Brahmana, he gave his heart to the order of his guru. And because of that, he was blessed to actually see, not just, he could actually see the situation of Krishna driving Arjuna's chariot. And he became overwhelmed with emotion, thinking that the Supreme Lord has become so kind, so compassionate, that he will take a meal. We don't understand what that means, because nowadays we don't have horses drawing chariots anymore. But especially on a battlefield, when you have the horses, there's a charioteer who sits below the fighter, like Arjuna, and the fighter has to concentrate on shooting arrows to kill his enemies or prevent himself from being killed. So he doesn't have time to tell the driver, go right, go left. So he does it with his feet. Left foot to go left, right foot go right, like that. So can you imagine, as a devotee, sitting behind Govinda and touch him with your feet? So that's why that Brahmana was so overwhelmed. That Krishna has taken a menial position to serve it. Because he said he wouldn't fight, but he agreed to drive his chariot and to be a charioteer. And not only that, he became the night watchman for the Pandavas. He did so many menial services for the Pandavas, because there is their most devotees. So not that we want to become pure devotees so we can put Krishna in a menial position, no. But we should understand that Krishna is so compassionate, so kind, that he will accept menial service for his devotees. Because it doesn't diminish him in any way. Krishna is always Krishna in every situation. He's always God. God is always God, as Prabhupada used to say. God is always God and dog is always dog. So you cannot expect a dog to become God. We can never become God, but we can become, again, pure servants of God. So we'll stop here. Any questions?
Krishna. Thank you for your class. Many nice points. Your summary of engaging our God-given talents in God's service is very valuable. You're talking about how we're so proud of our opinion, even though we're actually insignificant.
Even though we're actually what?
We're insignificant. There was one guy at Alexanderplatz in Berlin who didn't like our kirtan party and wanted us to stop. And I said, well, there's 7 billion people on this planet, and you're just one of them, and you want us to stop. Do you think we're going to stop because of that? And then there was like 3 people who were looking at our party and thought it was a good thing. And said, well, some people actually like our party. And so then I turned to go back to the devotees, because I was a little ways away, and the guy punched me in the head because I pointed out his actual position.
Yeah, and this is a situation. People are ignorant, and when you inform them that they're ignorant, then they get upset. So when I was growing up, there was a saying, and it's mundane, but it actually we can apply it in our lives. It says, "He who knows," and you can put "she" if you want, but "he who knows and knows he knows is a wise man. You should seek him. He who knows and knows not he knows, he's asleep. You should wake him. He who knows not and knows he knows not is a child. You should teach him. And he who knows not and knows not he knows not is a fool. You should shun him." So, until we come back to the point of pure devotion to Krishna, we're in the second category. We actually know. We've read Bhagavad Gita, we've read Bhāgavatam, we've read CC. We actually know. The knowledge is there, but we're still sleeping. And that's why Jeev Jago, wake up. But most people are in that last category. They don't know, and they don't know they don't know. And therefore they get angry. when you instruct them. And therefore, we should avoid such people as far as possible. Prabhupada gives the classic example, said in Bengal, one such foolish person was, he climbed up a tree, he went out on the branch, and he was sawing between himself and the trunk of the tree. So one intelligent person went by and said, "Stop, you're going to fall." He said, "Leave me alone," you like that. And that's all right. So the intelligent person kept walking, and he kept sawing, and of course he fell. But he was so ignorant, he thought, "Man, this guy must have been an astrologer. He could see the future." So he went running after him. Guru Maharaj, Guru Maharaj. So Prabhupada said, this is a case of astrology. Who needs astrologer? Whatever going to happen is going to happen. So as Vaishnavas, we're not so eager to engage in astrology. Consult astrologers. Whatever is fixed up for this life is fixed up. The only way it's going to change is coming before Govinda. Clap your hand. Jaya Radha Madhava. Then your fate for this life can be changed by Krishna. Otherwise, it's all fixed up. So what difference does it make whether you know or you don't know? It's going to happen. Of course, in certain circumstances, yes, if you can find a really good astrologer. But who's a really good astrologer nowadays? Because ultimately, to be a good astrologer, you have to be a devotee of Krishna. Any of these sciences are at their zenith when the practitioner is a devotee of Krishna. So whatever science, Dhanurveda, why did Arjuna prevail? Because he's Krishna's devotee. And Krishna, Karna and the others, they were also great archers and whatnot, but they were not devotees. Our medical science or any science, any art, any science meets its zenith when the practitioner is a devotee. I think one more and then we'll stop. Over guy had something.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for the class.
You have to speak up.
All right. Does playing cards equal clapping your hands in front of the deities?
It's a service, yes. It's a service. Don't you come to Mangalarti? The spiritual master is very happy when the devotees engage in chanting, singing. That's part of devotional activity. Not only that, the fourth verse, the spiritual master is happy when we eat prasadam. Chaturbhara Sri Bhagavat Prasada. So who amongst the newer devotees, who knows what are those 4 types of prasadam that are being referred to? 4 kinds of foodstuffs. You should know this. Read the translations. 4 kinds of foodstuffs that spiritual master is very happy when the devotees honor. One is type that is chewed, type that is drunk, type that is licked, and the type that is sucked. These 4 categories of prasadam, the spiritual master is very happy. So now is the time to go and please the spiritual master by honoring breakfast prasadam. Jai. Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.